Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about cultural trends. We're going to continue our unit on culture this week, and we're learning about cultural trends. And we learned that a trend is simply just when, we talked about when things become trendy, they become popular. And one of the things that you need to learn in the fifth grade is to be able to look at those cultural trends and um, and to evaluate cultural trends. And most of the time we do that through the use of graphs. Most of the time it's line graphs. And so our essential question for the day is, can you evaluate cultural trends through the use of graphs? Okay, and you can see there I typed evaluate in all caps. I use that word a lot. And we learned that to evaluate means to explain worth, how to improve, offer suggestions. To evaluate is to essentially give a grade. Okay, so we're going to look at that. And our SPI is SPI 5.1.4 to analyze graphs to discover cultural trends. So we're going to look at that, and I'm just going to go through here and we'll look at a few cultural trends. I have the graphs that I'm going to use. There are links posted on my lesson plans on the county website. If you look at the lesson plans, links are posted to those. So the first one that we're going to look at is presidential approval ratings as a cultural trend. And presidential approval ratings have been used since 1945, and you can see here that this graph shows several trends up and down for every president since 1945, from 1945 to 2012. So when we look at cultural trends as far as presidents go, you can see some of them, Harry Truman, very up and down. Okay, this website's great. This is on the Wall Street Journal, and each one of these actually give descriptions as to what happened to cause the drop in approval rating. So that's one of the things that we looked at. And you can see some of them are pretty steady across the board as far as approval ratings. Some of them, we learned that if a presidential approval rating is somewhere near the middle and it stays around 50-60%, then that president is usually people are usually very divided over that president. They either really like the person or they don't like the person. So we discussed that in class as well. All right, John F. Kennedy, shortened presidency, but very steady, very popular, over 70%. So you can look through these on your own. We looked at some of them got very low. Richard Nixon down close to 20% when he resigned. Very unpopular because of the war in Vietnam and obviously the Watergate scandal. But we'll get into all that later on. We looked at our current president, Barack Obama, and how his is pretty steady right in the middle, 50-60%. And like I said, people are very divided on Barack Obama. People either really think he's doing a great job or that he's not doing so good of a job. But instead of getting into detail about every one of these presidents, I think it's important for us to look at, is this a good way to grade presidents? Is it a good way to do that? If you think about the way you get a grade in class, you get an A, B, C, D, or F, right? So here we're just asking people to do they approve or not approve. It's essentially pass or fail instead of A, B, C, D, or F. So think about if there's a better way to evaluate presidential job performance. Okay, and then I'd like for you on your own time sometime to take a couple of these and just look at the difference. Okay, if you look at the difference, George W. Bush actually had up to 85% approval rating after September the 11th, and you can see that he finished very, very low at under 30. Okay, so look at some of the differences in the trends in presidential approval ratings. Okay, the next graph that we're going to look at has to do with technology, and it is smartphone versus PC sales. Okay, and you can see here that from 2005 through 2008, smartphones and PCs were both growing at a steady rate. But with the iPhone coming into play and becoming more popular around 2009, you can see PCs take a dip, and then smartphones really start to take over. Whereas it's pretty even in 2011, even today. I believe smartphones have taken over as far as sales of personal computers. So think about what you would recommend. If you're going to recommend a smartphone or a PC to someone, what would you recommend, and how would you use information like this to make your recommendation? Okay, so that's evaluating as well. And then also think about, what are the consequences of consumers, you and I, choosing smartphones over PCs? Okay, so think about what could happen if people decide to use smartphones over PCs. And then also think about, if you were to design a computer, I really want you to think creatively here. If you were to design a computer that would compete with smartphones, what features would you add to that computer? Okay, now the next graph that we're going to look at has to do with social networking. Okay, you can see there with this one, this is just a bar graph, and you can see that Twitter has become very, very, very popular in recent times. Okay, in January 2010, there's over 1,200,000 tweets per month. So think about what you know about social networking, and why in the world do you think that that's becoming more popular? Okay, so that's just a couple of cultural trends that we looked at and that we're going to look at in more detail. So those are just some questions to think about. I want you to look at some cultural trends like that, and just be familiar with that kind of stuff, because it's very important and you will be tested on it. So if you have any questions, please feel free to give me an email or just ask me in class, and I really hope you have a great day.